podcast focused on trends shaping the future of manufacturing. I'm Alexandria Burek, your host, here with A.W. Schultz, two thought leaders with a passion for people and manufacturing. Today and every episode, we are diving deep into the advancements, sustainable practices, and dynamic changes transforming how we produce everything.
And now welcome Alexandria Burek and A.W. Schultz.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Factory of the Future. I'm here with A.W. Schultz. I'm Alexandria Burek. And today we have an exciting new piece of the show that we are introducing. A.W. and I decided last week that we wanted to start bringing some fun facts to the show. So today what we have for you guys is a fact about when the first assembly line was created. So naturally, I ChatGPT'd mine, and AW is a scholar, so he knew his off the top of his head. The answers are different. ChatGPT told me that the first automated assembly line, was invented in 1913 by Henry Ford, and that it was automated because it used a conveyor belt to bring the parts to the workers who were stationary. So I thought was pretty interesting, and I think it's a pretty obvious example of an automated use of technology, or however you want to call it. But AW, why don't you share your take on it from a scholarly perspective?
Well, first of all, Alexander, I wouldn't say you're wrong. You're absolutely right. You said assembly line. I was thinking manufacturing, but what I'd shared with you is that it was around the 1700s when France and Europe were actually at war. There was a need for people to do work. Slavery was predominant. And there was also the advancements in technologies within steam and coal, which led to energy being available. And the textile industry became part of it, which was one of the leading manufacturers at the time. But you are right about the assembly line. If you look at the picture in the back, that's actually a quote from Henry Ford on the needs and trainings, and it's a picture of the Models T being built. But you are absolutely correct on the theory of assembly line. So that's cool. Congrats to ChatGPT and you.
ChatGPT wins again. Yeah, I swear to God, I need to create an Instagram account called ChatGPT and me. Yeah. So okay, cool. Well, thank you for the education on that. With the steam, it's interesting. I think that's one of the things we all take for granted now is just having energy available, right? Like that was a huge development for them. And then how did they harness it and turn it into kind of what it is today is an amazing thing to think about. So you were in the middle of researching some stuff in advance of the show. So I'd love to turn it over to you and let you introduce kind of our topic today. And then hopefully we'll just have a really cool conversation that the audience will enjoy.
Yeah. So I've been doing research on, as our podcast says, the factory of the future. And it's something that's always excites me to know what's going on in the world, what's changing on it. And I'm always getting drawn into what's going on in Europe. They seem to do a lot of the research on it and kind of bringing ways on what's going on in technology. Now, for me, I talk about Industrial 5.0, which to those out there is more of an evolution and a theory. But as I was doing some research up to this podcast, I took it back into what Industrial 4.0 is. Yeah. Now, 4.0 is all that data that's out there, that putting that stuff in the cloud, running algorithms, and maximizing efficiencies. But I came across a survey done by Deloitte in, I'm going to say it was 2018.
Nice.
Now, well, the data is pretty solid. They did 1,600 C-level executives in 19 countries. I wish I knew how they get a hold of them. That'd be pretty cool. And they were asking them on their readiness for Industrial 4.0. Now, just as we know the history of it, things have changed since COVID. We've seen a dramatic push for supply chains and the insecurities we saw with with the common goods that are out there. So we've got some learnings through that. So when I'm looking at this survey, I'm taking a little bit of a backseat on it and seeing what they were seeing on this survey, which is not overly old, but certainly it kind of lays foot to what we might be seeing in the coming years. And I look forward to seeing if some of the survey will be coming out later.
Cool.
But on the survey, it divided out into 4 different categories. One, they're asking about what the social impact on it. What do the executives in these roles see, and not just in the organization, but society as a whole.
Yeah.
The strategies that they're bringing forth on industrial 4.0 technologies, that mindset, the decision making, how to stay agile and quick and flexible. And for me, the one that we talk a lot about is talent and workforce. Are the employees, talent strategies of the workforce, are they bringing forth that new talent that they can operate and be part of this new technologies that are being applied within the workplace? And then, of course, the fourth one, which drives a lot of 4.0, is the technology.
Yeah.
How to improve it, harnessing the potential, that smart technology, digital physical integration, whatever that goes on that hot list.
Yeah.
So when they ask these executives, and I'm going to read this verbatim, is to what degree does the organization consider itself able to influence the following issues? And unsurprisingly, 60% of these executives deliver the best possible product. They want to deliver the best possible product to the consumer.
Yeah.
That was a 60. And jumping to the very far end of it, 10% was concerned about environmental sustainability. Now, when we talk about 5.0, that really contradicts it. But what I found is interesting is I went in, there was several questions on it, but the 2 that really resonated me is the next one was, which of the following issues will have the greatest impact on organization over the next 5 years? So right around the time we have here.
Yeah.
The 41% of the executives, and there was multiple different questions they asked, but they believe the changing regulatory environment.
Oh, okay.
So while they're least concerned with it, they are very concerned that it's going to be impacted on them through regulatories.
So do you interpret that as them saying, hey, we're not concerned with it, but we identify it as a risk that we may have to agilely act on in the future?
Yeah, that's exactly
kind of my interpretation of that.
Yeah, and it's also that unless someone does something about it, we're not going to do anything about it.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay. I mean, we all can't, I can't say I wouldn't say blame is the right word, but I can't say I'm surprised, right? It feels like a company isn't necessarily motivated to reduce their margins, unnecessarily, right? Like those people, the C-level executives, they're not rewarded based on reducing margins, but having a greater environmental, that's not part of the reward system, at least as far as I can see. And be interesting to see how tax credits affect that, because with regulatory and with incentives, you would think that there would be equal and better tax credits available to the organizations that are moving in that more environmentally conscious and sustainable direction.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And many of the data out there, it brings interest to where decisions are being flowed into.
Yeah.
So that was probably the heart of what I took about this Deloitte survey. And there's several out there also, but when we think about the factory of the future, it's about technology and that flexibility of driving change and driving improvement and incorporating people in part of it.
Yeah. So as we were talking about kind of how we were going to approach this episode, which as you're talking through this survey, I would love if you could send this to me firstly, and maybe we could even link it in the show notes for any of the audience that might want to read it if that fits their reading plans. But I think about when we're selecting technology, I feel like it can only be successful if it's paired with the right leadership and the right people to manage it and roll it out to an organization. When we met at basically a technology conference. That's what that was, is, using technology and people to make better manufacturing decisions and prevent all the failures and things like we talk about here in Factory of the Future all the time. But, you could use the best technology, but paired with the wrong person who doesn't have the right vision or ability to communicate kind of the strategy to the end user, that great technology is useless. So I think, like, when I'm thinking about this, how can these executives or how can anybody in the audience find the right person to pair with this technology? Because that really brings in this human-centric approach. Like, what do you think we could do with that?
Yeah, that's that $1 million question.
Yeah.
And it comes down to, it starts with the person at the top of the mountain.
I feel like there's something with, like, I'm almost like waffling between, like, does it work best if the person who is responsible, like who's already in a role, identifies technology they want to bring into the scope to advance and achieve whatever executive or whatever goal the organization has? Is that the best way? Because you've got the person who's ultimately responsible. They've got the buy-in because they're bringing it forth as their idea. So then they're that much more committed to it. Can you?
I also had in that survey, it talks about human capital trends.
Oh, okay.
And it's. I'm just going to read this.
Yeah.
The problem, according to the 2017 Deloitte Global Human Capital Trends, the problem is not simply one of reskilling or planning new and better careers. Instead, organizations must look at leadership, just what you said, structures, diversity, technology, and overall employee experience in new and existing ways. So they talk about robotics, AI sensors, cognitive computers for going mainstreams, open talent economy. I'd have to define
That's less.
that.
Yeah, I think I know what that is. It's less like you're aligned. I think right now our current ecosystem is like, you're an employee of XYZ company. I think it's moving more towards a gig economy. And like, maybe my strength is technology integrations and bridging siloed technology to make better decisions. So instead of me being employed by just my company, I go and bring that skill to all the different companies, and I'm really good at that one thing. And then it's more of an open market, because now I've switched from one company where I've got to do a bunch of stuff I hate, the blah work like we talked about last. And it's more me doing the things that I'm best at, that I can bring the most value at. And it's less allegiance to one company and more to others. I think that's the way I would interpret that.
I think you're right. I think of contractors, I guess that's the one term we say.
I saw a recent stat that like by 2030, 50% of the workforce is going to be a solopreneur or like gig economy. Like, I think it's either 2030 or 2035. And I'm like, thank God, that's such a relief. Like, I think that's kind of funny that that's how I think about that. But okay. So I think that executives would benefit from that. If you think about and also, by the way, I think what we should do, this is a total sidebar, I think we should try to reach out to those executives and see if we could get any of them to come on the show and like ask them questions about then versus now, and see like what's taken shape about kind of like, some of these things. That might be really interesting.
So that's a little bit intake what Deloitte had to offer on that. And I wanted to share it with the group because it's very evident to one of our podcasts.
Yeah.
But
what do you think is, like, we're coming up on Q4. Everyone's doing 2025 planning, probably personally and professionally. What do you think, maybe 3 things that anyone in the audience could kind of consider, inspired by or otherwise, that study, that they could plan for in 2025 to give them an edge on the competition. So kind of like the CEO said, oh, we know that this is a potential problem. We're not going to take any action, although we realize we may be caught on our heels about it and it's going to then scramble type situation. But until then, we're just going to say we know it's out there and it could be a potential. Like, what do you think 3 things a executive could kind of try to plan for in 2025 that'll give them a little bit of an edge and put them less on their heels and more on the advance?
High level, I mean, I'm still going back to talent development, engaging employees. And, in a previous episode, we talked about, ESG, environmental, social governance, and what's coming down the pipeline. Because like the survey just indicated, they're worried about some of these regulatory things that are coming forward. And, being ahead of it is beneficial. There's a theory out there. It's called the law of diffusion, or diffusion innovation, I think it's called.
Cool.
And it's essentially a bell curve. But the idea is you've got your early innovators, and it's set up just like the bell curve. And then you've got your ones that come along later, and then there's probably like me, and then there's the lagging indicators, people that come along later. But the early innovators are usually those tech companies, those ones that we hear about in the news that are coming forth. So I think about that when you're trying to do your strategies for 2025, to being up front. But as we talk about in almost every episode, it's still a people thing. You can have all the technology you want. We still need people part of it.
Yeah, it's interesting that the way you answered that question was almost from a company perspective, because I went a little bit a layer down on that, and I was thinking in my head about that same bell curve that you described, and how really organizations should be seeking the people on, I guess, the left side of that bell curve, the early adopters, and really targeting those for their development, because those are going to be the ones pushing the company forward with change. Those are going to be the ones who are agile and ready to act on whatever regulatory or otherwise, things get thrown. They're the ones who thrive in those changes and see the possibilities and the ways of reinvention. So I feel like that was a great episode. I feel like it's time for us to clock out. And
I think so too. A lot of fun talking about Industrial 4.0, but we are going to check out of here like finished goods.
Yeah. Right. Bye.
This is Factory of the Future, and we are out of here like finished goods. Stay tuned for our next episode of Factory of the Future, where we're exploring groundbreaking techniques and behaviors that are reshaping industrial landscapes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review and help others discover the cutting-edge insights transforming manufacturing as we know it.